This is a video about population health management and how, with the right tools, CCGs can understand how healthcare resources are delivered and consumed. Because when you can measure and profile the at-risk patients, resource usage and treatment patterns across populations, you'll have the evidence and the insights to transform services and target resources where they are needed most. The following insights come from population profiling and are based on an original presentation by Chris Morris at South, Central and West CSU. It is more common for a person to have two or more chronic conditions than just one. This graph shows the scale of multimorbidity in a population of about 200,000. For this CCG, of the people diagnosed with COPD, 89% have at least one other chronic condition. More than half have COPD and at least 3 other chronic conditions. This is similar to diabetes, where over 80% of people diagnosed with diabetes have at least one other chronic condition to manage. Multimorbidity contributes more than any other factor to high costs, high emergency admissions, high pharmacy costs, and high A&E attendances. Various factors contribute to the high cost of some patients compared with others, such as age, gender, deprivation, or the presence of certain high-impact diseases like diabetes or heart failure, but none more so than multimorbidity. This chart represents a CCG population in the south of England. As the number of chronic conditions a person has increases, so does the associated cost and resource use. This graph shows the effect on emergency admissions. Multimorbidity is not confined to the elderly. Moreover, for people with 7 or more chronic conditions, the average cost can vary little between age groups. This graph shows the opposite of what you might expect, that for people with 7 or more chronic conditions, it is actually those in the younger age bands that cost more on average. Multimorbidity burden varies between GP practices. Quantifying this information can help CCGs understand differences in cost or levels of acute activity. This graph shows the differences in morbidity burden between 13 GP practices within a CCG. For the CCG as a whole, patients are mapped to each resource utilisation band such that the patients in each RUB across the whole CCG have collectively consumed 20% of resources. The colours represent patients in different resource utilisation bands within each practice. Non-users have no chronic conditions and have not been seen by a GP or had any hospital-based activity in the previous year. Each of the other 5 bands shows the percentage of patients that have collectively consumed 20% of resources in the year. So for example, in Practice 1, about 2% of patients who are in the very high utilisation band used 20% of resources in the past year. Likewise, the 55% of Practice 1 patients who are in the healthy band also consume 20%, and so on for the other bands in between. Comparing the practices highlights the differences in the numbers of patients in each RUB for each practice, and therefore the differences in case mix. In Practice 13, about 30% of patients have a morbidity profile that places them in the moderate, high and very high utilisation bands. Whereas in Practice 5, this is just under 10%. This information can help provide a fair and equitable approach to resource allocation, so you can target care where it is needed most.